Welcome to another episode of I'm Dying to Tell You. This is Dr. Mark Goulston. Um, I have a terminal illness. The prognosis seems to be fluctuating as I might be a candidate for some heroic efforts. I'll keep you posted. The purpose of this podcast, which is unedited, first take, and I hope you'll find value in it, even if it's not as polished as other videos. I just don't have a team to be able to help me with that. Today's episode will be a little less morose, a little less morbid, if the other episodes have been that way. I want to share with you something that I have observed about depression and anxiety that I hope you'll find helpful. I hope you'll find novel. I hope you'll find it's something you can apply to your life or someone you care about. First of all, let's set the frame for it. What I've observed in the majority of people who become depressed, including myself, I've been depressed on a number of occasions during my life, is that it's usually after an expectation that they or I were counting on too much. That expectation was going to change everything. It was going to change my life. It was going to make me successful. It was going to make me happy. And because I didn't want any naysayers, I didn't have a backup plan in case it didn't work out. So I was counting too much on it. And then when it didn't happen, other people and I plummeted into a depression. So think about that. Think about if you have had depression or you know people who have been depressed. Think about if that's the case for them or you, that you had an expectation of something happening that would have lifted you out of your depression, cheered you up, helped you to be happy and successful, and then it just didn't happen. And you kind of fell apart. Now let's shift to what anxiety is. So if depression is about an expectation from your past that didn't happen and you fell apart, anxiety is the worry that a future expectation is going to fall apart. And you're anxious not because that expectation will fall apart. You're anxious because if it does, and again, you don't have a backup plan, it's going to throw you into another depression. You're going to plummet again. So does it make sense that if you could increase your confidence to be able to handle anything that life throws at you, or if I could handle anything that life throws at me, and yes, be disappointed, yes, be ticked off, yes, vent a little bit, but I don't plummet. In fact, not only don't I plummet, it actually makes me stronger and smarter than I would have been had I not had the disappointment. Now, this is not to say, by the way, that you don't have backup plans whenever you have an expectation. I think that's the smarter and wiser thing to do. It's just that so many people don't approach life that way. They put all their eggs in one basket. So how might we increase our confidence and ability to handle any expectation so that, yes, we're disappointed, but no, we don't plummet into a depression? There's a good chance that what has happened is there's been a number of times in your life when that failed expectation threw you into a depression. So one of the techniques I've been using, and see if you can track along with me, is I've been visiting some of the times in my life, and it's been a reasonably long one, 75 years, when failed expectations failed job, failure to go straight through medical school, failed relationships, failed partners in a business. I've been going back to various times in my life when something I expected to happen didn't, and I went into a depression. So here's one example, one of many, and see if you can pick out one from your life. It's pretty public knowledge because I have another podcast called My Wake Up Call, and I've often shared something that occurred to me or happened to me. Well, it didn't happen to me, it happened for me. But that was on another podcast episode of I'm Dying to Tell You. I dropped out of medical school twice. And the first time I dropped out because I was, a little confused, a little depressed. Took a year off, seemed to feel better, came back, and then I dropped out again because it was almost completely depression. So I've done this exercise in many other places, and I'm going to do it for you and see if you can do the same thing with you from a setback, a failure, a mistake. So there I am at age 26, dropping out of medical school for the second time. And when I dropped out for the second time, I took a leave of absence because I was passing everything. But when I dropped out, I didn't think I was coming back to medical school. I'm not sure I was thinking I was coming back to life. So I was pretty low. Classes had moved past me. I was in a short-lived marriage, and I don't blame my first wife for cutting her losses because I would have tried to cut my losses from me. In fact, the medical school tried to cut their losses from me, but there was a special person, the dean of students, who stepped in and saw something in me that I didn't see, saw a future for me that I didn't see, and was willing to go to bat for me against the medical school, saying, we're giving him a second chance. That was a lot of risk that he took. So, but the exercise for you to try, and that I'm now going to show, is I imagine going back to my 26-year-old self. And again, not knowing if I was going to make it back, make it through life. And I imagine going back to him, and I see that his face is kind of lifeless. His face is not particularly positive. His face is kind of broken. And I imagine going up to him, and he doesn't know who I am. And I say, feeling a little low, dropping out again, not knowing how this is going to end up. What if I were to tell you that this is what your life becomes in the next 50 years? First of all, you will come back to medical school and you'll finish. Second of all, what you're going through, this depression and going through this low period, it's going to help you reach people that nobody else was able to reach. In fact, you're going to become a fairly well-known suicide prevention specialist. And for 35 years, none of your patients are going to die by suicide. And you reach them because of what you're going through. Now, my 26-year-old self was looking at me like, what are you, crazy? What are you talking about? And then I say to him, I said, wait, I'm not finished. Not only do you finish med school, but you go to a residency in psychiatry that's one of the top 5 in America. Also, you meet a wonderful woman who takes a chance on you, damaged goods, though you may seem to think you are. You get married. You have 3 children. you have 4 grandchildren. Your children grow up. They have each other's backs. They achieve, they accomplish in life. They're a little bit tightly wound, but you have a functional family. And you stay married for more than 45 years. Well, until death do you part. And who knows when that's coming up. Not only that, you sort of take notes when you make it through med school. You take little notes in little crummy journals, and you're not a writer, but 257 volumes later, 45,000 pages, turns out that you write or you've co-authored 10 books. One of them is called Just Listen. It's over my shoulder right now. It becomes the top book on listening in the world. And get this, you're a little bit shy, hesitant to raise your hand, intimidated by medical school. You go on to speak around the world. You speak in Moscow with a Nobel Prize winner named Daniel Kahneman. He wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and you're a headline with him. You go on and you write over 1,200 articles and blogs. Now, my 26-year-old would look at me and say, "What's a blog?" A blog is, by the way, there's also going to be something called the internet, and the internet is going to change the world, mostly for the better. But as I speak to you from who I am now at age 75, that's up for grabs. How much better the world is now than it was when it was at the time you were 26. You might not have been enjoying yourself, but anyway, I don't want to get on that tangent. And I can imagine my 26-year-old again looking at me. What are you talking about? I'm dropping out. I'm never coming back. And then I imagine saying to him, I know that's what happens to you because I'm you. Look at that mole on your right arm. Look at the mole on my right arm. This happened to you. You did it. And he's looking at me, still not believing it. And he goes, no way. And I say, yes, it happens. So what I would like you to do is, especially if there have been times when you've been really depressed, especially if there were times when you actually got suicidal, especially if there were times when you made a suicide attempt. But if you're watching this, you're still alive. Now you might say, well, I'm not as accomplished as you and I'm not as happy as you. Yeah, but you're still alive. And my hope is that if you're watching this, you're, not thinking of taking your life today. But go back to all those times when you had an expectation and it didn't work out. And talk yourself through it. Tell that former you right after something didn't work out and you plummeted. Have a conversation that, they might have something to look forward to. Also, if you practice this, add to it, what are the things that you actually learned from plummeting? I'll tell you something I learned, and when I became the speaker, I shared this with audiences. I'll ask audiences and I'll ask you, have you ever had a breakthrough in your life? Have you ever had more than 5 breakthroughs? And a breakthrough is something positive. You go from where you are to this breakthrough and life is actually better. I've had hundreds of breakthroughs. And 90% of my breakthroughs were preceded by breakdowns, expectations that didn't work out, major plummets. To now, what I realize is I don't plummet so deeply, because what I realize is more often than not, those breakdowns are going to turn into breakthroughs that never would have happened. In fact, this whole series of podcasts where I talk to you about I'm dying to tell you, this whole dying thing, I'm not even sure I see it as a breakdown. I see it as something that I'm pretty accepting of. I'm not crazy about the idea, but I'm pretty calm. In fact, I'm not depressed. I'm not anxious. I'm taking the steps I'll need to take. And if it helps, it helps. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I'm fine with that. And the whole reason I started these episodes is because if you want to call dying a breakdown, the breakthroughs it's teaching me, what each of these episodes are just crazy. And I appreciate it if you have been listening to these or listened to this episode, because I'll tell you, if it was 5 years ago, I wouldn't have listened to what I just told you. I could have been kind of stubborn. In a previous episode, I could have been engaged in things that were important, but also a lot of things that weren't important. In a previous episode, what I shared with you is I have really discovered what's important in life by seeing so clearly what's not important. I mean, really not important. And I've just been lopping those things off one by one. It's like whack-a-mole. Well, that's not important. Knock it up. So I hope this wasn't too meandering. And if it is, and you've lasted this long, I want to thank you. But give it a try. If you've been prone to depression or anxiety, or you know someone who has, play this for them and see if it's related to expectations that got the better of you. And if anxiety is about expectations that something in the future is going to get the better of you, it doesn't have to. So until next time, and I think I'll be around for next time. There'll be a point where I'm not around for next time, and I'm just going to keep doing this as long as I can, because it gives me another thing to live for. So take good care, and we will see you again. Oh, and here's where it gets clumsy, unedited. I'm looking around, these darn Zoom things, they put the Zoom buttons, the recording and the stop recordings. You can hardly find them, but here it goes.